This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
Sit up straight, eyes up front, and put your listening ears on. We're about to learn some important lessons about teachers and technology, and who better to teach us? Yes, it's teachers. Remember how weird it was to see your teacher at the grocery store? Ugh, yuck. Well, what's it like for kids to see their teacher on Instagram or Tinder or on a podcast? Ye gods! Ha, I'm scaring myself. And I'm Jamie Elcroft, here with high school teaching aide Lori Rogenkamp, first grade teacher Jenn Ruben, and college professor Bernardo Attias. And now, pay attention, because yes, this will be on the test. Our host, Louise Palanker. Weezy.
Thank you, Jamie. A for announcing. Okay, so good news. I love teachers. Bad news. You will one day dream that you missed this class. We are exploring how technology is impacting teaching and teachers. And we're going to begin with Bernardo Attias.
Attias, yeah.
Attias.
Mm-hmm. Bernardo and Alexander Attias.
Alexander Attias. Yeah, and indeed. Your nickname is Ben.
Yes.
So Ben's here. And can you click on the link for Ben? Because although it's very impressive to look at, he told me that everything in the bio is not up to date. Because it's much easier to keep
I think I wrote this bio in 2002 or something.
I know. Well, how else do you expect to get a job? But you're creative with your bio.
Yeah. Now, you look like you were in a band during this period.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So,
actually, my hair was short in that photo.
So a little more,
much longer.
A little more about Bernardo Alexander Attias. He is a professor of communication studies at California State University, Northridge, with research specialties in rhetorical studies, cultural studies, performance studies, technology, and freedom of speech. He has published on the policies of psychoanalysis, on transgressive sexualities and consent law, on popular music and culture. His teaching includes courses on classical rhetorical theory. I should probably have you read this, Ben. Freedom of speech. I need a class on how to pronounce your bio. Do you guys offer that? His teaching includes courses on classical rhetorical theory, freedom of speech, crime and punishment, peace and conflict, postmodern theory, and cultural studies. He is publishing constantly, and his credits are substantial. Equally impressive, Dr. Attias is also a DJ and occasional performance artist. And when Connor got here earlier, and he's just fresh off the boat from Ohio, I said, this is not a left turn once you've been in California long enough. Of course your professor is a performance artist. We're in California.
That's right. Kids. Yeah, and he's got a screenplay.
So, Ben, we know that technology is changing how teachers teach, but at the college level, how is it informing what you teach?
Well, so a few things. I've been using online tools in my classes since before it was cool. And I'm probably still using the ones that are no longer cool. But in the maybe 1996 or so, I started teaching a class called Communication and Technology. And it was a class that we had on the books for many years before that, but it hadn't been taught in probably 6 or 7 years by the time I got there. And it had been taught with different technologies. I mean, it was more about using I don't even know. I mean, maybe
dictaphones?
Yeah, maybe dictaphones or fax machines or something. Yeah. No, it was way before Friendster.
Oh, before Friendster.
Laser pointers.
But you know, at the time there had been a growing body of research on the effects of technology on communication. Particularly that research had kind of started with the invention of television, so it was going back quite a ways. But of course, the internet and the use of the internet in education was kind of a new phenomenon at that point, and I was very excited about it at the time. So I actually wound up teaching a few online classes at that time, and the technology that we used then was completely different from what one uses now for that. Most of the synchronous sessions where people would meet all at the same time were using a chat room, basically. So it was all just text. There was no video or anything like that, because that would have taken, it just would have been ridiculous how long it would take to download the information as opposed to what you can do now. And we used like a very basic kind of discussion board software that people posted on. But now the tools have evolved, quite a bit. And I would say that the tools that I'm used to now are probably pretty out of date.
But specifically, what tools do you use now?
Well, so for what they call learning management system, which kind of manages all the content in your class and that kind of thing, people can upload assignments. You can put your syllabus there. People can look, and there's a calendar and see what's due on particular dates and things like that. And all the readings are up there in PDF form and that sort of thing. That tool is called Canvas, and it's open source, but it's very similar to a lot of people around the country use something called Blackboard, which is real similar. Yeah. But it's basically that, but it's open source, so it allows the university that uses it to kind of edit things the way it wants, rather than kind of hope for the company to make the changes they want them to make. So that's the main tool I use. I also, when I teach a class that's completely online, I will use something called Zoom, which is basically video conferencing software.
Yeah, we use Zoom here.
Yeah, we Zoom.
Okay, yeah.
We're Zooming. We might be Zooming right now.
Oh, okay.
Don't even know it.
Zoom. I actually really like that tool because it does allow you to have multiple people attend a class session and interact, and you can also interact with text, and then you can put them in groups and have them interact with each other and that sort of thing. And it also, which is really helpful for online classes where people aren't required to show up synchronously. They can, Zoom will save the video of the class session, and then other people can go look at the video and respond to it there.
Or pause and rewind and listen to something again because they were dreaming of muffins.
Absolutely,
which
is
I often
very
do.
important.
Now, I have a question. Do the teachers at CSUN or the professors at CSUN, do they have like a secret chat group where they can complain about specific students?
It wouldn't be secret if I talked about it on a podcast now, would it?
And I want to know.
I'm sure there are plenty of informal such chat rooms.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's got friends and complains to their friends about whatever.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Sure. Now, I want to know, what are rhetorical studies? Don't answer that.
It took Jamie 10 minutes to form that joke, and when it was fully baked.
I'm a huge fan of dad jokes, so yeah.
Fully baked. But we had a teacher when my kids were going to high school at DeGraw High School, Jason Busby. And the whole thing was, oh my gosh, you got your phone in the classroom. Don't text in the classroom. Don't use your phone. Oh, I'll take your cell phone away if you do that. And the slap on the hand and everything. He was so smart because he gave all his students his phone number, and then he had them text the answers to questions to him, so they could actually be on their phone and using the tools that they were used to using for communication to communicate with teachers. Is that the kind of thing you do?
No, but there is sometimes we have students do presentations and they use a tool called Kahoot. Which is basically that, where people can ask a question, and then Kahoot is like a game show toy, basically, that the students can all be logged into the same session. Somebody asks a question, and then they can choose A, B, or C, or whatever, and they choose it on their phone, and you can see on the screen live updates of who voted what.
So they're all in Kahoots.
Yeah, you
exactly.
Can create. It's like a game, but you can create the game, or you can play another game. So, like, if you wanted to learn about history, if you had a history class, if you wanted it to be like a pop quiz, you could have people log in and create the game, or you could have people, or you could just have it be like you would just look up history questions or something.
All right. Well, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce Jenn Ruben. Jenn teaches first grade in Los Angeles. This is Jenn's 18th year of teaching. She has taught third grade, second grade, and kindergarten. She has taught as an English language specialist working with second language learners in K through 5. And she has also worked as an intervention teacher for LAUSD. She now teaches first grade with the English language learner cluster for the Burbank Unified School District. Jenn, welcome. You're working with children who will never know a world without tech. The internet's fancy term for these people is digital native students. Ryder is one of them. We have him present in studio. He's authentic. He's been authenticated by experts. When kids know that information is a tap away, are they more curious learners? Do they know more than you knew in first grade, or are they simply more overwhelmed and distracted?
Good question.
That is a good question. I kind of feel like it really depends on like how the parents perceive, technology. Because I have students that are, from being a toddler, being able to use a phone and swipe or a tablet, and then I have parents that are very strict on screen time. So it just depends on how they're being raised in that sense. But yeah, I mean, the first thing that we do when we go to the computer lab, the students look at me and they're like, I don't know how to turn the computer on, and they're trying to swipe the screen. And I'm like, no, it's called a mouse. You have to know how to use a mouse.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's terrifying / awe-inspiring to watch babies swipe. Because, like, before you know it, there's like a Tinder date at the door for them. It's crazy how babies are swiping. Like, who taught that baby how to swipe?
Yes.
Why is that baby swiping? Who lets that baby swipe? So their little brains know cause and effect, right, doctor?
Yes.
You're a doctor?
Sure.
I mean, so they know, like, if this, then that, and they like it. It's so from jump, babies are being taught that if I look at this screen and do things to it, it will please my brain.
It'll change too.
Yeah.
Is
And
this
I have control.
I have control.
I
yes.
have control.
So is this ultimately a good thing or possibly a dangerous thing?
Well, it could be both, and I feel like that's been my philosophy of online education ever since the mid '90s when I started doing classes online and talking about this online. Is that really the tools can be used in all kinds of different ways, and it shouldn't be any different of a debate, at least as far as education goes, as when they invented the chalkboard or the pencil or the eraser.
Or the printing press.
Or the printing press, yeah. I mean, there were big debates about these things. And certainly the television,
You won't know stories. You won't memorize, because before the printing press, there was a lot of just storytelling that was handed down. And of course, we don't realize it, but there was just as much a concern about kids with their nose in a book as being harmful.
Yeah.
Is that not true?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that you would see a kid with a book and think that could be a not so healthy thing, but is this different than those developments were in human society?
Well, yeah, one would expect them to be different, but the difference doesn't necessarily mean it's apocalyptic. I mean,
Okay.
I guess that's kind of my perspective on it is, these things can be used in positive ways or negative ways. Part of it is, at least from a pedagogical perspective, is what do you hope to accomplish in the classroom, and does that tool help you accomplish that?
I hope to
If
learn
you're going
the
the other way
definition of the word
around,
pedagogical.
Pedagogical, me too. I'm going to look that up online.
just say teaching. Yeah.
I mean, I thought we were all just going to pretend we knew it. That's why I was like, yes. Pedagogical.
I was agreeing with him.
And that is how Lori got through school.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
That was a rhetorical word.
Yes.
You don't ask about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to delve into Dojo a little bit. Are you familiar with Dojo at
I'm
all?
not,
Oh,
no.
you're going to be fascinated.
Oh, good.
Okay.
This is interesting.
So Dojo, and Jen's going to speak to Dojo. This is kind of it's a behavior management and parent communication app. Can you guys go ahead and click on Dojo? And Jenn, you can talk about how it works in the classroom.
Okay. So Class Dojo I actually really love it. It's a really interesting tool that creates the village, to say, because a lot of times parents are working, they don't have time to be able to come into the classroom, but they can look at the app or at the website and see how their student's doing. And so it's just a way to give rewards for students who are behaving themselves, if they're helping out on the school, if they're doing something that they're supposed to do.
Good way to spy on children.
Well, it is, and it's a good way because that way the parents can see before they even come pick them up from school what kind of day we're
And if
having.
they're
I think
having
it's
a
a
behavioral
really
problem.
good way to create a permanent record in kindergarten. This is on your permanent record.
The funny thing is that it's
Whether you're
private.
going into Stanford or not.
It's private. It's private. So
That's
whatever.
Stanford.
Jasmine, this is on your permanent record.
Exactly. I can threaten that. But
You're a
that's not
biter.
really-
And now everyone knows.
You're losing a point for biting.
Go ahead, Jen.
We don't bite people.
I like it because it's better than what my kindergarten teacher did, which is just after all the parents are there and the kids are there and everybody's leaving school, she would just point to me and go, "She stuck a pencil up her nose. You might want to look into that."
Is it still up there?
Because the pencil was still up there. Yes. It was one of those little miniature golf pencils.
Yeah.
with the name of the restaurant she had eaten at.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead. So Dojo, how does it work? So you're a kid. Let's say you're Ryder.
Okay.
And what's in it for Ryder, to behave?
For Ryder, so what it would be is he would get a login. And he'd be able to log in and create his own little monster avatar.
Oh, cool.
And, he could pick the teeth, he could pick the eyes, pick the color. And then he can actually, at the end of every week, he has a class story. So he can click on the story and it will show a pie chart of his behavior. And so it also logs like whether he got individual points for himself or if he got points as a class as a whole. Mm-hmm. And so the kids like it because they know that their parents are going to see how they're doing. But then I also kind of tie in at the end of the year. I give prizes to the students who have the most dojo points. I also have another system that if they have these little cards, and if they don't turn their cards in, they get tickets. So they don't lose dojo points, they don't turn their cards, they get tickets, and then they can go shop at the store.
A little bit of the real world there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Wow.
So I'm just wondering if there's any drawbacks. So because I had listened to a podcast where I guess some of the parents were complaining that this stuff, even though you need a login to access it, it's still online. There's still a digital memory of this child's behavior in second grade. So do parents ever have issues that their child's behavior patterns are logged digitally? And
a privacy issue.
And privacy,
yeah.
Or do parents go, oh, this is excellent because we're all busy people and this helps me be able to not just say, how was your day, but to actually ask questions that are about his day because I know something about it myself.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing is that the students, so once they're logged in from a classroom at the end of the year, if the next year's teacher is using it, you can assign them to your class, but you can't see anything from the year before. So it doesn't bring up a past history. It just shows for this current year. So conversations with the parents, any class stories that were posted, all that, it just stays within that one teacher. So like I could send out a message to all the parents and each parent can write back, but every message is confidential between myself and that parent at that point.
But in real life, and I'll get to your thought in a second, but in real life,
yeah,
since the dawn of time,
the doctor's
teachers
getting
have
anxious
said,
over there.
Oh, you're getting Henry? Good luck.
Yeah, good luck.
You guys do talk, not about in a disparaging way, but I can help you with this child because this is some of the behaviors that we've seen and this is what he's still working on. Like you guys do talk about kids, right?
We do talk about kids. Not everybody at my school uses Class Dojo. So, it's kind of one of those things that you would hear about it regardless if you're using the app or not. It's just one of those things in the beginning of the year where you look at your class list and they're like, okay, we have to talk about this student. I have to give you some backstory.
It's counterproductive if not everybody's using it.
You just have to get people to buy into it. I mean, the thing is, it's really nice because there's a big push for growth mindset, which is basically encouraging students that you might not have it now, but you will, not yet. And so they have this little avatar called Mojo, and they have different videos where you can watch. And they talk about perseverance and growth mindset and mindfulness. And so it just kind of helps the kids understand that, like, even though it's hard now, the more you keep trying
to process,
the easier it will get.
Yeah.
And so you can customize the points. So one of the points is perseverance. So if when I catch a student who, even though they might not be understanding it, they just are not giving up, they get points for that.
Okay.
Yeah, I work as an aide in a high school, and it's for mild, moderate kids with special education. And I find that a lot of times they start at a place of failure where they'll be like, well, I can't do this. I suck at math, so I'm just not even going to try and do math. And it's like, I always go like, look, it took me 12 years to graduate college. Like, nobody's perfect, you know? Like, I'm here and I'm supposed to tell you what to do. Like,
and I had to learn to count to 12 in order to do that.
I know.
That's right.
I always have to go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
How many years I've been in school?
But I feel like it just, the kids, there's like something going on, and I don't know if this is a universal thing, but where kids just feel like they're not as smart as they want to be.
Because your peer group is a constant barometer, so that you see the framework within which you find yourself, and you're trying to figure out, well, who am I and how do I fit in? And that's a constant challenge for all humans, but especially when you're a child because it's changing every year. It's so fluid, and you just want to be able to hold your own. What were you going to say, Ben?
Well, this is a different point, and this may be too theoretical, but I always ask about these technologies is what is the technology itself teaching, and what I kind of grasped on when you were explaining this technology is that the incentive for behavior that you want to reinforce is shopping. And that is kind of troubling to me, I mean, I think it's something, because that's not part of the lesson at all. No. That's not being talked about, like what, or at least, maybe some teachers are talking about it, maybe some aren't, but that the tool itself is based on a certain model of what's important and what's not, and that's implicitly being communicated.
Yeah, the behavior should be the reward.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's what
or something else.
And that brings me, to my next question, which is, when we use programs that reward or punish every good or bad behavior, are we also able to encourage moral development, which will inspire kids to create a standard of conduct in themselves for no reward other than the knowledge that they are being true to their own personal standards of conduct? Now, I get that you're going to say first graders don't have a standard of conduct. They do not.
No.
It's in the process of developing itself, and this kind of helps them put good habits into place.
Yes.
But what do you think about moral development and how to instill that in them, just the doing good for good's sake?
Well, so there's a book that we read that's called How Full is Your Bucket? And it talks about being a bucket filler or a bucket dipper. So that's one of the points that you can get on Class Dojo, whether you filled someone's bucket. There's also, so like I have caught being a bucket filler. There's also points for cleaning the classroom, taking care of the school, being respectful, following directions, being on task. So it's trying to reaffirm the behaviors in which you want them to have growing up, so that eventually it's not necessarily like, look, I got a prize because I behaved. It's, this is what I need to do to be a functioning member of society.
Yeah, and they're actually proud of the behavior.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what
And
you
do
want
you-
to encourage.
Do you think that encouraging the good behavior and then performing the good behavior has its own internal reward, that ultimately they don't need to shop that felt good? It's not just that they're getting a prize and getting to shop at the store, but the behavior itself feels good because we're all human, and doing good or being kind to someone else just feels good. Is it possible that
it may not feel good to everyone?
But it doesn't, because people aren't in the habit of doing it.
I just think
Or
also
they think that doing good will take something away from them. In other words, everything's a zero-sum game. If there's this many beans and I give you my beans, I don't have any beans. Rather than it's feeling good is a replenishable resource. It's not a limited commodity. What were you going to say, Lori?
I just don't think that kids, especially at your young age, have that kind of attitude towards feeling good. I think they look at it like, I remember when I was a kid, if somebody told me to clean up the classroom, I would say, why do I need to clean up the classroom? Like, I didn't do anything to the classroom. So, I think you need to teach kids, first you need to teach them by kind of moving, like kind of taking their hand and gently nudging them in that direction. And then as they get older, they realize, no, you want to clean the classroom because you want your environment to be good and you want this to be. So as you get older and older, like for example, if in college, if he was doing the same thing, if he was like, I will give you points and you can shop and do it, that wouldn't be good, because these people they should already be at that point where they should know what that feeling is, but you can't tell it. The kid, they don't have like that kind of awareness yet.
Right. So
unless they're taught at home.
I'm sure you know that with every child, it's a different story.
Yeah.
They have a
Yes.
different backstory. Each are individuals.
They're all individuals, and they all come with different
Baggage.
morals, baggage, what they've been taught is right and wrong versus whether they've been taught at all. And so,
because some kids are taught, that it's right, whatever you can get away with.
yeah.
Whatever. Oh, if you can get away with that, that's great.
I feel
And
like
these are messages in our culture in a variety of places.
The culture,
I mean, including at the top of politics right now. So it's not, it's not something that I think a particular online teaching tool is necessarily going to help unless we, the culture has to agree that being good is a good thing. And I don't think this culture agrees on that at this moment.
I agree with you. Yeah.
Right.
And you talked about perseverance before we move off of that.
Yeah.
One of my favorite stories was when my son was told by his teacher that he had to persevere. And he just sat there and kind of looked at her. He said, you have to persevere. Do you know what perseverance means? He said, yeah. Perseverance is when mom can't find her purse, but she keeps looking for it anyway.
Oh, a new
Which was
dad
a
joke.
great answer.
Hey, Ryder,
A new dad joke.
get back
He's
here,
not
Ryder.
wrong, right?
Ryder, I need you. You got
But-
to persevere at podcasting if
Now-
you want to speak on the
Now,
podcast.
she also said that she had been taken over to see the Sphinx and the Pyramids when she was 12 years old by her grandmother, and she saw the Sphinx and the Pyramids in Egypt, and he raised his hand and said, "They're finished now," referring to her age, how old she was. And that was a teacher-parent
my gosh.
conference.
That's
All right,
nice.
we're going to
Now,
talk about
would you
some.
put that into your dojo? Would you put that in
No,
your
because
dojo
if
right
we're-
away, or when you got home that night?
No, well, if that was during a conference, hopefully the parent was there with me and we would just laugh. And we'd move on
No.
from it.
Yeah. Okay.
There's certain things. I mean, you
But
know,
how do you
everyone-
register the dojo?
You can do it from a computer. You can do it from an iPod or
Yeah.
from a tablet of any
So
kind.
as it's happening, you can.
You just click on. You can give points. What I like to do is I like to give mostly the whole class points, and then I'll start rewarding those kids who like really have earned them.
Excelled.
I don't like to take away the points, so there's obviously much more positive than negative.
Okay.
Just because, again, no one wants to feel like they're being beaten down constantly for doing something wrong.
All right, we're going to talk for a moment about some of the learning games that are used now in the classroom. So does this mean that there's computers at the back of the classroom, or that everyone has, like, how do kids use these games? So we have ABC Mouse. Go ahead and get the mic close to you, Ryder, so you can speak to some of So some of these learning games are ABC Mouse, ABC, Teach Your Monster to Read, and Spelling City. So is it like an activity or a time period during the day when kids would utilize these programs?
So we get at our school, luckily, we get to go to the computer lab every
the computer
every
lab.
week. And so in the computer lab, that's when we're able to go on the different sites. Spelling City is something that I do put my spelling list online so that at home, if the parents want to access it, the kids can play games to learn their spelling words. And it helps also sound out words.
really
so
good.
if I have students
Great.
that don't speak the language, it helps put those two together.
That's great.
ABC Mouse, I really like. Last year, I had a student who moved here from Russia who spoke no English. And so it's just these are websites that when we were doing something in class that I knew was way over his head, he would go on and listen to stories being read to him just so that way he was getting some sort of input in English.
That's my cousins came from Vietnam, and that's
Okay.
primarily how they. Dora the Explorer was a big one for them. Yeah.
Okay, which of these games have you played, Ryder? Get really close to the mic, honey.
I played ABCI, and like she said, we also have a computer lab.
Okay.
And I've been there like since second grade and first grade and kindergarten, but not today because it was my first day of school today.
So let me ask you this. Do you find that playing these games helps your brain learn things?
Yeah. Yeah, there's like first grade, second grade, third grade, and like fourth grade and fifth grade. You can pick an ABCI. I haven't played ABC Mouse or any of that.
But you will.
What's your favorite part? Like, what's your favorite game that you get to play?
I don't really have a favorite game. Like all the games are pretty good, but not. It's like they're learning games at school that people are, and like you said, there's computers in the back.
Mm-hmm. So is that something that you get for being good? You get to go use the computer if you've done all your other work?
Yeah, that's what they did in Mr. Murphy's class.
That was a good class, yeah. Our very own Lori Roggenkamp is an aide at a high school for the Aspire program, which is a mild to moderate special education program that has the purpose of getting students adjusted and back into general education classes. So Lori says, the writer's sneaking out of the room. I may need you for another question. You're my expert. No, he can go. It's good. It's good.
I don't think the CIA is in your future, buddy.
I don't think so.
That
either.
was not entirely stealth.
No.
So, Lori, at your school, you said the kids use Khan Academy.
Yes.
And we have links for that, gentlemen. Khan Academy and Kahoot. So tell me about these games. Are they more designed for high school level?
Khan Academy is actually more of a online classroom kind of. Basically, you can go on and the teacher can actually go on and select topics that they want the students to learn. There's history, English. You pick grade, you pick by everything, and then you assign courses. And so you can select. And so a lot of times we have a lot of students who are have a lot of social anxiety. So they don't like to go out into general population. They like to just kind of sit by themselves. So what we'll do is we'll usually give them a Chromebook and have them go on Khan Academy.
Okay.
We try and work with them so that they can eventually get out, but that just so that way they have something to work on.
Something to work on. So
yeah.
So would you say it's less awkward to be an awkward kid because there's something to do, whereas I just had to like sit somewhere, in a pose that seemed, like, don't mess with me.
Yeah.
The book was kind of my go-to thing. And I'd get made fun of because I was reading a book that was for boys. I can remember there was nothing you could do to stay out of the line of fire.
Oh, yeah. I remember one time somebody smacked a Hardy Boys book out of my hand and was like, "Why are you reading that? You won't even understand what's going on." And I was like,
"Oh, you're kidding."
Still English.
What year in college were you in at the time?
This was
what of the 12 years?
Yeah, I was repeating senior year. I was repeating it for the third time.
Okay.
My professor did.
And the Hardy Boys is required reading. I believe.
It's English literature.
Well,
that's my major.
You have to understand Gold Dragoons and Pieces of Eight.
You don't have to tell me.
All right, and what about Kahoot? What is Kahoot?
Kahoot is that's more of a gaming thing, but it can be used educational.
Oh, those kids are having way too much fun. Stop. This cannot go on.
It's actually it could be used in any setting, really. It can be educational. Like I said, I taught a summer school class, and I did like a test at the end, a quiz at the end where I did like a bunch of all the things I taught and all the things we learned during summer school. Oh. And so, like some of it would be like we watched all 3 Batman trilogy movies. It was a really educational summer school. But I was like, who played Batman? And so then that was like one of the things that I did.
So you got to set that up.
Yeah, you can create your own quiz. Or you can go on and like search quizzes. They have like different like Marvel comic quizzes. They have all sorts of different quizzes that you can search and you can play, and you can do nicknames, and it's just fun for the kids to be able to like have like a fun thing to do and to see like their stat and how much they know and stuff.
To kind of measure their own knowledge, just like the way we all enjoy the Jeopardy.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to pause for a commercial break and then get back to this because we have more games to go over with you and more exciting topics to discuss.
Yay.
I'm Michael, the host of the semi-monthly podcast In a City Like Yours. Join me as I chat with interesting people with interesting life stories. You can listen to the podcast on all major podcast platforms, including Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. You can follow us on Twitter at IACLYS Podcast, as well as on Facebook and Instagram at In a City Like Yours Podcast. Please feel free to let me know what you think and keep coming back for the many interesting stories in a city like yours. This podcast is part of the Michigan Sports and Entertainment Network.
I love that show.
I'll be there.
Did you guys realize that the learning-based gaming industry was, as of 2018, a $2.4 billion industry? So there's a lot of money in this and is part of what's going on. Just like in all of gaming, the whole freemium model where in order to win the game you have to spend money is part of what's going on, this competition for our attention? Or are the people who create these games really interested in helping kids learn? What do you think, Ben?
Oh, I think it's both for sure. I mean, I know people in this industry, so it's not, I don't feel like it's this evil cabal of capitalists in a room with smoking cigars and deciding how they're going to rip everybody off, but at the same time, I do have concerns about technology that's geared toward the idea of entertainment being the kind of dominant value. And I find that, having taught for 25 years now, I've been teaching at Cal State Northridge, and thank you.
That's awesome.
About time to retire, isn't it?
Maybe. Yeah. But I've seen this over the years that more and more students kind of expect the classroom to be a space of entertainment, and I like to be entertaining. I feel like like it can be valuable. I'm not against it on principle. I'm not like anti-entertainment. But at the same time, the flip side of that is I want people to feel like there's something else going on, that they don't have to be entertained in order to learn something. And
learning is its own entertainment.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a different kind of use of your time.
Right.
I think, and the other thing too is that I remember KRS-One used to have this concept of edutainment. That he was making hip hop records and saying, well, he was educating people, he wasn't just entertaining them. And I think we need to look at that as well. Is that the things that we are entertained by are also, even if they don't tell us that, they're also educating us. So all the bad TV that we think we're just turning off our brain and relaxing and that's our leisure time, we're also learning things during that time, and they may not be the best things.
Yeah.
And that's where it's a good idea to kind of have an eye on that and look at what we're learning.
And it doesn't matter what a Kardashian is going to wear this evening.
I actually had a lesson about that my first semester being an aide, because it was the first time I was really dealing with students, and there was one student who was like, he was very good at writing songs, and just creatively that was really all he wanted to do. And so he had to write an essay about a book that we had just read, and he was like, well, I don't want to write an essay, I'll write a song about it. And I was like, well, I'll help you write the song about it. And so we did it, and I thought, I was like, oh, I'm really helping him. But then afterwards the teacher said, well, when he gets to college, if he goes to college, do you think that, like, if he's studying this same book or Shakespeare or something different, do you think that they will allow him to turn in a song instead of an essay? Like, he needs to be able to sit down and learn how to write. And this is the time. Like, he can't be learning how to write it when he's in college. He needs to learn it now. And so I was like, I felt like, yeah, I was helping him kind of tap into that creative space, but at the same time, it's like he has to learn how to write, how to construct an essay.
Yeah.
And so even though it could be frustrating to have to sit down and go through that process, once you kind of get through it, then it becomes easier and easier and easier.
Yeah. Is there a consequence to the gamification of learning curves that are meant to be difficult and strenuous? Isn't learning to work hard for a result part of what we are meant to be learning as children? I just want to throw that question out for the panel. It's kind of a.
I think a lot of times competition tends to cause people who are. I truly believe, I don't think there are any dumb people. I think that there are people who are ignorant.
What do you mean? I don't understand.
Okay. I truly believe there are mostly not dumb people.
Okay.
There's one dumb person, and he just happens to be in this room. So
look how quickly you learned how to reframe your question around knowledge that you had recently acquired.
Clarification.
So I think that for some kids, and I was in this boat when I was in high school and stuff too, is some kids don't learn as quickly as others learn. They don't retain information. And so when you're put on the spot, like with Kahoot, when you're put on the spot, it's a time thing. So it's like you have 10 seconds to answer this question. Well, sometimes a kid who might know the answer, but just doesn't read as fast as other kids do. So just because they don't read as fast, they might not get to the answer correctly. So then they're last, and then they feel dumb when they're not actually dumb. They're not, it's just, so I think one of the things that can hurt with that is it's sort of enforcing this rule of like, not only do you have to be intelligent, but you have to be quick.
But what I'm wondering is, with the gamification comes this, that we're entertaining our children while we're teaching them, when some things are just meant to be a slog. Are we gypping them out of learning how to just power through something unfun?
Well, isn't it about reward, though? I mean, in so many levels, because it's like Dr. Ben was talking about entertainment in the classroom, and entertainment maybe doesn't belong in the classroom necessarily. Entertainment is usually when you kick back from everything else and you say, okay, I have time to do something I really want to do. And so then you're rewarded by that with your leisure time, and you can just block your mind off.
But you know that. But if you've got a classroom full of 6 or 7-year-olds, you have to entertain them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to entertain them in the guise of knowledge. Yeah. Or you have to give them knowledge in the guise of entertainment, rather.
But learning is entertaining because we're starving for information.
That was the point I was trying to get to.
Sorry, Jamie.
Is the reward of learning. And I think that is instilled at home, but it also can be instilled in school at the early level, where you say, "Oh, isn't that great that you knew that? Isn't that great that you knew Battle of Hastings, 1066? I'm so proud of you for remembering. And who was that guy? William the Conqueror. That's right. That's wonderful." And so you encourage that, and you're actually rewarded by having the knowledge, just like you're rewarded by being entertained.
It's also the joy of discovery, which is best illustrated by that moment in The Miracle Worker, when Anne, or what's her name? The little girl.
I know. Anne.
Anyway, Annie.
Annie.
Is the teacher
Sullivan.
named Annie?
Annie Sullivan.
Annie Sullivan teaches.
I had to Google that.
I should have
Helen.
Helen Keller.
Helen Keller.
Well, yeah, like the most famous person who's ever lived, and you don't know her name.
Okay.
It's president before Donald Trump.
All right.
It's going to come to me.
So there are two dumb people in the world.
Moment of discovery. When Helen realizes, like, oh my God, you're spelling words into my hand. Like, that's just pure joy.
Yeah.
So we are really searching for information. We do find that joyful in and of itself. Away from bells and whistles and shopping.
We should, yes.
We do. I mean, you're at the rawest level. You're with kids who are discovering, oh my God, I can read.
It's actually amazing. I had a student last year who came in and said, I can't read. And by the end of the year, she was reading at a 5th grade level.
That's amazing.
Wow.
And it's just because she bought into it, but she really enjoyed it. She liked it. And, when they're 6 and 7, you kind of have to make it entertaining and fun, because then that makes them want to come back for more.
Yeah.
But reading isn't just reading. Reading is a pathway to all the information in all the world. Yes. So once a person knows how to read, all of the doors open to anything they've ever wanted to know. Yeah. And so hopefully, what you get to teach in 1st grade is like the wonder and the joy of the wonder of learning and knowing that if I'm curious about grasshoppers, I can learn about them because I know how to read.
Yes, definitely.
And creating lifelong learners. And I think that's what's fun about being a 1st grade teacher, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's definitely rewarding, because the students, whatever topic it is that we're talking, if I buy into it, they buy into it, and then they get really into it.
And you're very enthusiastic.
I am.
That's so cool.
You have to be, though. Like, I wouldn't be able to be a 1st grade teacher, because I'd just be like, all right, we're going to take a nap for the 20th time today. We're all just going to lay down.
And remember, when you dream, you learn.
Yeah. Just dream about math.
Now, Ben, what are you noticing in students' ability to focus and apply themselves to a difficult task by the time they reach college?
Well, again, this is something that I believe I've seen change over the 25 years that I've been teaching. And I do think our attention spans have shrunk. I do think there is, when I started teaching at CSUN, I guess you could, but it wasn't there wasn't as much information out there that you could just Google. So if you want to learn about grasshoppers today, you just type grasshoppers into Google, and then you start reading and read Wikipedia or whatever. And there's very little sense that you have to get off your butt and go to the library or read a book about grasshoppers, or go spend some time with some grasshoppers and see how they behave and that sort of thing. And there's a scholar, Shiva Vaidyanathan, who has this book called The Googlization of Everything. And I think that concept, he uses it in a few other ways, but that concept of the idea that suddenly all the information is at our fingertips, and in some ways, it's all the same now, right? In other words, it's not as exciting, and there's nobody who's, why bother getting excited about grasshoppers? You could also look up ladybugs, or something else.
There's nobody who knows more than you can just look up.
Yeah, and I don't mean to put that down. Like, I love being able to research everything without getting off my butt. I used to spend hours and hours in the library and walk out with a giant stack of books that was up to here, and break my back getting that stuff home, so I could read through all those books to find out something, that I wanted to know. And you don't have to do that anymore, and that's a real benefit. But the flip side of that is, what you were talking about earlier, the kind of the joy that comes from a long slog of trying to get through a long book, or really grapple with a problem and think it through. Those skills are we have to find more creative ways to get at those skills using the new technologies.
Otherwise, we get lazy.
It feels like what we do, because information is so readily available. What we do is we go deeper, and we try to find out something that no one has found out before, or we find a tributary and we go deeper down that, or we want to know we keep refreshing the page to see what the latest studies are of grasshoppers, to find out something and then post it on our social media before anyone else. We're sort of in competition for the first one to know a thing.
Or you go on Photoshop and you put a grasshopper on Ja Rule's head.
Right.
And then you send it to your friends. That normal stuff.
Are you spying on me? So Ben also uses Zoom video conferencing for presentations. He uses PowerPoint and Prezi. He records video lectures with ScreenFlow and uploads them to YouTube. Here is an example of Ben's handiwork. And I think this is really cool, just because my brain wanders off, and I love the idea that you can pause it and rewind it, because I didn't hear a lot of what professors were saying to me, because I was supposed to be taking notes while they talked. I can't do those two things at the same time. So I love the idea that when lectures are uploaded to YouTube, you can it's more conducive to how different people's brains work.
Yeah. Were you chewing gum at the time you were trying to take the notes?
No, Jamie, please.
Okay.
Only one woman.
Too much.
She wasn't even breathing. She had to hold her breath.
Hold her breath. Take notes.
Run outside, breathe.
It's been
talk about that very interesting concept that comes from philosopher Jürgen Habermas of refeudalization of the public sphere, the way in which historically the public sphere has become refeudalized by non-democratic interests. Third, we'll be looking at the way that the age of the network sort of influences the idea of the public sphere and really the practice of public sphere in modern society. And finally, we'll be looking at what I'm calling the public sphere in the time of Wikipedia and social media. In other words, what recent developments on the internet, particularly Wikipedia, but also social media as a general a kind of concept, and it's various other forms of social media include things like Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, etc. We'll be looking at sort of the fate of the public sphere in the modern era.
So Ben, can you define the public sphere and talk about how the public use of reason and how technology are impacting the public sphere?
Yeah. So that little clip was from a lecture on that topic, where I was looking at basically that question, the relationship of technology to the public sphere. So the public sphere is that loosely defined arena where public opinion is formed. So when Kant was writing about this, many years ago, he was talking about not just like newspapers and pamphlets and things like that, but also coffee shops and public forums where people would tell stories, would talk about. But what made it public was that it was about the things that affect us as a community or as a group,
the shared
rather
experience.
than an individual. Yeah,
the shared experience.
So I want to talk about something specific that I think speaks to that. We jump on opinions really quickly because Twitter tells us what our opinion is supposed to be, and then that suddenly becomes everyone's opinion because you don't dare express the opinion that isn't the opinion that you've been handed as this is the appropriate opinion. So one good example of that was like the first debate I watched the first debate with a bunch of family members and my friend Fritz, and my husband and I drove home and we talked about the debate. And by the time I got home, the people on TV were telling me that Kamala had kneecapped Joe and she was the clear winner of the debate. And I found the moment cringeworthy to say to Joe Biden, I don't think you're a racist, but, and then to talk about something that happened 30 years ago that everyone sort of decided wasn't the best way. Yeah. Anyway, I thought that it made me feel uncomfortable and that I didn't think she won the debate.
She overstepped.
But the poll, right? But the polls said no. It's clear she did. So is it possible that when people were called that evening and asked that they simply parroted what the commentators had told them was the result of the debate. And then 2 weeks later, when they had a chance to go to the coffee shop and their cousin said, in other words, do we have to be given permission to have an opinion? What's happening?
I mean, so yeah, there's a lot there. I mean, the question of polling itself is problematic because of exactly what you said. I mean, we use these very, very it's very strange. We ask a bunch of questions, yes or no questions to people, and then we gather that information and then report it, and then people see that information, and then they base their opinions based on what they see in that information. And the information is based on questions that tend to be very binary. So we have this kind of idea that all knowledge fits into this binary, or they tend to be based on this idea of somebody won because Kamala asked an embarrassing question to Biden or something, and that's a really, I think, limited way of understanding what's going on,
and
especially when public issues are at stake. Like,
they were saying,
one of these
now we
people
know
may
what
be
it would
president.
look like if she went up against Trump, and everybody was thinking, but Joe Biden isn't Trump, so why would she do that to him? Yeah. Anyway, that was.
Oh, I had a question. I don't know if I'm going out too off the rails, but one of the things I think is, and I don't know if maybe you have some insight into this, when Trump won, the polls had
Trump won.
I know. I'm so
Not
sorry.
really.
Oh, we
I'm
are
so sorry.
deep.
The electoral college.
Not really.
Not the public vote.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Not the public vote.
Yeah. When Trump became president through some means,
That's better.
The poll showed that Hillary was going to be the winner. That's what I had been told. That's what everybody saw. The polls were saying Hillary's going to be the winner. And so after that, people were saying, I remember seeing articles and people talking about it, saying, maybe do we put too much emphasis on polls? Like, what should we do? And then now, not even, a little over 2 years later, people are saying, oh, well, we have it in the polls that whoever's going to be the Democratic nominee is going to be Trump.
They are polling the crap out of people.
But it's like, why do you think that even when the polls were wrong in the previous time, why do you think that now people are still going back to that as like a marker?
So let me say a couple of things about that. First of all, the polls weren't necessarily wrong. The polls gave Trump something like a 1 in 7 chance of winning, which means 1 out of 7 times Trump wins.
Okay.
Right. So the poll didn't say he's absolutely not going to win.
Especially with
right?
cheating, he wins.
So that helps, right? It definitely helps when you.
And also apathetic voters who just don't vote.
Right.
Yeah.
People that weren't excited about Hillary, and so they were just like, I don't want to vote for either one of these people.
Yeah. I mean, the polling is a technology, and the technology has limitations, and it has things that it makes possible. And I think the U.S. public's love, romance with polling started in the 1950s when I think it was. I'm going to say I'd have to look this up because I didn't prepare to make this comment, but I think it's a 1952 election.
Well, you're being recorded,
right?
And it was
somebody check my work, but I think it's a 1952 election where one of the networks like had a computer predict. And everybody looked at the prediction and said, "No way in hell that's going to happen." And the computer was off by a tiny fraction of a percent.
But Ike had the best song.
Was
Ike had the best song. Ike for president. Ike for president. Right. I mean, gold.
So deep, very deep, very deep.
So what's interesting, I think, is that we're just desperate for someone to tell us what's going to happen, and that's where polling comes in. It's like, we don't want to wait to find out what's going to happen. We want to. It's like immediate gratification once again, right?
And we don't want to take action.
We want to know that
we just sit there and let the polls tell us. And I think it started. I think Dr. Ben's right. It started with the Gallup polls back in the '50s, and everybody was, the Arbitron for radio, Gallup polls, and everybody kind of clung to that. And said,
we still believe technology is magic. I mean, that's the bottom line. Is we look at these polls
as
a tool, and just look at the word medium, right? These are mediums of communication, right? And medium is also somebody who talks to the dead. So we do have this idea that this is supernatural, some kind of supernatural force. It's not. A scientist can explain it to us and explain us what the limitations are and so forth. Yeah. And that's true of all these kinds of tools. But nevertheless, we want to believe that. So we still will continue to look for polls for answers or other technologies. Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
That's crazy.
I have a side question. You said you've been at CSUN for 25 years?
Yeah.
Do you have tenure then?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can tell us about the secret chat rooms where they talk about students. Because nothing will happen to you.
Or just lend us your login for a day. You can use my Netflix.
Perfect.
All right, we're going to cut right to what's Twitter trending because it is National Radio Day, and some of the people in this room did start out in radio, me and Jamie.
Yes, we did.
So we have, it's hashtag National Radio Day, and Dina was tweeting about it earlier today, and she made some fun tweets. And this tweet comes from, let's see, do you have the tweet from Discernment Radio, gentlemen? This tweet says, Jamie, you want to read it?
Happy National Radio Day. Just wondering, is there a National Podcast Day?
But
Good
isn't
question.
radio, so this is the question for the panel, isn't podcasting just the modern version of radio on demand?
Feels like it.
It's just,
Yeah.
you listen to the show you want when you want?
Definitely now that it's become more commercialized. I feel like I'm essentially listening to the radio now.
Yeah.
And why do you listen to podcasts? Are you seeking opinion there? I mean, are you looking for some sort of consensus, societal consensus?
I
on the podcast?
legit listen to mostly murder podcasts.
She does. She does.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know what that's telling about me.
Well, I like listening to podcasts that teach me something. So that goes back to just kind of what I was talking about, our thirst for information. I like to learn things that I don't know about things I'm interested in. And podcasting just kind of fills your brain with anything. You know, you could type in toast, and there's a toast podcast.
Ooh,
Don't think I haven't. And so whatever it is, I remember when I was a kid going by the magazine store and like you'd see crocheting and like motorcycle, like wow, there's a magazine. Someone buys that magazine and someone's like eager for the next issue.
Yeah.
And so it's the same with podcasting. It's like, wow, I love humans. When we're interested in something, we crazy go nuts. What were you going to say, Dina?
Oh, I just was going to say there was an article that came out today in Variety online about Conan O'Brien and his podcast, and they sort of did like a little analysis of like the current podcast landscape and, what, like, is it more popular now or, what's the next thing that's going to happen?
And where were we mentioned?
Yeah, where did they say? What'd they say about me?
What Conan said. So what they mentioned was that, I think what they quoted Conan as saying there's kind of a bigger connection, right, between the podcaster and the listener. And like it feels like a more authentic connection than in any previous kind of media. Like Conan was. So the article is saying like, wow, can you believe Conan O'Brien was on television? And now he's on a podcast. Like, it's so crazy to, like, see that, like, set. But he was kind of saying, like, the way that I can connect to people is so much more meaningful than how I did as, like, a late night talk show.
I mean,
host.
you have less corporate hoops to jump through. It can be immediate and it can be conversational, and everyone can feel like, well, I've chosen this and I'm hitting play when I want to, so it feels very personal.
Yeah.
Like this is a dialogue between us.
Right.
Yeah.
And when I grew up on the radio, listening to the radio, because I grew up in the 90s, and the radio seemed like a medium that was like you were part of like a big thing.
A big family.
Yeah. And when I listen to a podcast, it feels like very personal.
Now, I tweeted today and I thanked Rick Dees, who gave me my start in radio. And one of the things that Rick Dees always taught me was never say you guys, never say you people, always talk to one person, because his thing was that people aren't sitting around a radio in a group. They're basically getting ready for work or driving, and they want you to talk to just them.
Yeah.
My
station manager gave me that note once when I first went on the air. And so about a week into being the morning man in Key West, Florida, I put a set of Groucho glasses, the nose and the mustache and the glasses, on my microphone. And I just talked to Groucho. And that's how I learned to talk to one person out there.
I call him Mike.
And, I'm talking to you. You call him Mike.
Yeah.
But I had to give a face. I had to put a face on it, and so
That's adorable.
it was adorable. It was really sweet. I wish I had some photos.
So we have also a tweet from Get TV Tweeted, and they tweeted, before the iPod, before the Walkman, we had the transistor radio. And look at those guys.
Wow.
Those transistor radios, they would sit
I had one.
on my nightstand.
Yep.
And you had a little earbud that you could put in your ear and listen to. I listened to WKBW in Buffalo, New York.
Yeah, and it was like New York.
Yep.
Can everyone like shout out their childhood radio station that they listen to? Mine is Z100, New York City.
Oh, Z100. Yes.
I used to listen to a lot of 640 AM KFI.
Nice. KFI,
because
yeah.
April Winchell and then Phil Hendry were
Oh,
on
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So I would we had this giant wooden radio, and it had like a plug-in thing where you can listen on one giant. It was like an earmuff almost, and so I would sneak out of my room at night and go and turn it on and listen to the radio.
One
like
jingle.
a creeper.
One jingle. Do it. One jingle.
Oh my gosh. Well, this is April Winchell. She would start. This is how she would. She had the janitor of KFI do it. She go, "Hey everybody, it's time for April Winchell show. This is April Winchell."
Wow. It's almost like she's here.
Wow. In the morning, WKBW.
That was you?
What do you got? Where'd you grow up?
Zeta 4 in Florida. I'm sure it's long gone, and it's a very unremarkable
As long as you know
station,
the jingle,
but
it doesn't matter.
I don't remember.
It lives on in the airwaves.
But
Jen?
they would get the lead out when they would play Led
Get the
Zeppelin
lead out.
songs,
Oh,
and they had to.
okay.
Oh, what did they call it when they played 2 songs in a row by the same band? I don't
Double
know.
whammy.
Something along those lines. Yeah, but that wasn't. Yeah, I don't know.
But it's
double scoop.
It's a part of us. It's part of what forms us. And what where you grew up in Los Angeles?
I grew up in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I listened to K-Rock and Kiss FM.
Oh, 102.7.
Yeah, young.
FM. Probably listened to the weekly top 40 when I was writing for Rick D.
Probably.
Oh,
Jamie?
wow.
Youngstown, Ohio, WHOT, with your bearded bosom buddy Boots Bell. My bearded bosom buddy Boots Bell. And then we moved to New Jersey, and I listened to Dan Ingram on ABC. And Dan Ingram was probably one of the greatest radio DJs ever to have lived.
Now, what I want to know, you young gentlemen, did you listen to the radio at all ever?
Be very careful.
These are 20-somethings.
Yeah, I did. I did. I know 98 PXY and 107. I think it was like 107 something Kiss FM. Was that it? Up until like, I don't know, middle of high school.
Rochester?
Whatever. Yeah, Rochester.
Cool. Connor?
I don't know what radio is. I don't know what you guys
What is this radio
Good
you
answer,
speak of?
Connor. Good answer.
All right, so Connor's gone, right? He's gone.
This will be Connor's last day. Sweet kid.
Good having you on the show.
And where's that tweet that, oh gosh, let's see.
You were the founder of Premier
Do you have the tweet that Dina posted on the TIFO page? Yeah. All right.
Okay.
So I'll let you read it, Dina, since you composed this.
If everyone could please wish a very happy National Radio Day to the creator and host of TIFO, co-founder of Premier Radio Networks, documentary filmmaker and all-around amazingly cool person, Louise Palenque.
And I'm sitting there with Robert Palmer like we're married.
Yes.
Remember when I was married to Robert Palmer?
Yeah, you guys
in the radio
were such
days?
a cute
And he always
couple.
wore a tie. I felt so underdressed.
And Gloria Estefan.
And Gloria Estefan and my cousin Trish. Trish Bach. Trish Bach, everybody.
Oh, there's Trish.
Trish
Hi,
Bach.
Trish.
Weezy, what's like a story that like when you were like, yeah, radio, this is what I want to do.
I had no aspiration of going into radio. It was quite accidental. I was in television. I was firmly entrenched in television. I worked on a TV show called PM Magazine.
Yeah.
Which had local hosts and hostess in every city. And so I got to write stories and we called them wraparounds, where you'd send our hosts, David and Sandy, out to a location. I'd book the location. I'd do all that. And then one summer we had Rick Dees come on and guest host PM Magazine, and he chose me to be the writer of the Rick Dees Weekly Top 40.
Really?
And the next thing I knew, I was
Fantastic.
swept up into radio.
Wow.
Which was fine with me because I love radio. And from there, I met my partners, Tim Kelly and Steve Lehman and Ed Mann and Craig Kitchen, and we formed Premier Radio Networks.
Yeah.
So I've been a radio girl ever since.
Which was wonderful.
And then I met Robert Palmer, and we fell deeply and madly in love.
Because he really turned you on.
You know,
wasn't that his hit?
Yeah. I had to learn how to play fake guitar and
shake them, shake those puppies.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
When did you guys know that that's what you wanted to do, to be teachers?
Well, that's a good question.
Because I think it's like, as an aide, when I first went in, I have my family's teachers, and I didn't really think that teaching was what I wanted to do because I knew how hard my family works. But then when I went in, I was like, it was like a whole world opened for me. And I was like, oh, this is like everything I've ever learned, everything I can help these kids. So I don't know what it was like for you. What was it like for you?
Well, I was going to say, I sometimes have students that say, you know, when I'm doing advising and things like that, you know, like, well, I don't really know what I want to do with my life. And I say, well, you know what? I'm not sure what I want to do with mine yet either. So don't worry about that so much.
And then do they give you really good advice?
Yeah.
Do you take a vocational test?
I think you're good at teaching.
I think things, you know, we're always in the process of becoming. I mean, for me, teaching was I never thought, okay, I want to be a teacher. I'm going to figure out what it takes to do that. I was really into school. I was really into learning and researching and knowledge and stuff like that. And then I decided the next thing after college was to go to graduate school. And I went to graduate school, and to pay my way through graduate school, I got teaching associateship, you know, so it kind of was like, oh, well, this works for me. And this is one of the few things you actually can do once you finish getting a PhD. So, but I love it, you know, and I would say that it's probably, it's something inside me. Like, it was always a part of who I am. You know, when I'm just hanging out, I've always got like stories that have some, you know, kind of lesson to them or something like that. So
it's such a commendable profession. Such a commendable profession.
It is.
Amazing.
It's always exciting to be learning, I think. What about you, Jen?
Yeah, Jen.
It's so funny because I hated school. I was the worst student. I didn't want to be a teacher. But I ended up being a nanny for a little boy, and I would have to help him with his work. And he looked at me and he said, "You should be a teacher." And I was like, "You're right, I should." So I went back to school and I got my
He's a
credential.
good advisor.
So how old was this little boy?
He was 10, and I think he's 30 now.
So a 10-year-old got you started.
Yeah.
What's his name? Let's give him a shout out.
His name was Eli.
Thank you, Eli. You're super
Eli,
smart.
thank you for Jen. Thank you.
One
more thought, and then we're going to close it up.
I was just going to say, I think it's funny you guys say that, because my favorite teacher of all time was my high school English teacher, Mr. Malosh. And he said, if you had told me when I was in high school that I was going to be a teacher, I literally would have spit up on your face. Because he was like, there was no way that I ever thought I was going to be a teacher. And he was my favorite teacher of all time. So, yeah, I think it's like, it's one of those things where, like you were with radio, it just sort of organically happens.
It unfolds, and then you kind of know and trust your gut. Okay, this is meant to be. I'm meant to open this door and walk through it.
Yeah.
And then
exactly.
Just trust that path and that some sort of like geo system inside of you that's kind of like pointing you and steering you. And I probably should know the word for compass, right?
It's hard to know when to make that decision.
I got to go back to school and learn more words.
It's a leap. It's truly a leap of faith to choose what you want to do.
Yeah, but you kind of know, like you kind of remember those moments in your life where you're presented almost like with a crossroads, and you go, "Am I going to go write for Rick Dees, or am I going to stay here at PM Magazine?"
Right.
And like, I'm going to go write for Rick Dees. Like something just moves you to go and do that. Like I just feel like this more speaks to me. And the better you get at things, the more opportunities are available. Now you work for Burbank, and that's one of the best school systems. And it's just awesome. And just like every path that you took led you to where you are, and the path you're on is leading to you to where you're going.
Exactly.
So with those wise words, I would like to thank our guests, Dr. Bernardo Attias and Jenn Ruben, and to our panel, Lori Roggenkamp and Jamie Alcroft. Our producer is Dina Friedman. Our tech team is... I've learned not to fill this in until you guys show up.
It's always different.
Francesco Demanda, Thomas Hubble, and Connor Eldridge. Our audio mixer is John Maddox. Our webmaster is Bill Filipiak. And I am Louise Palanker. Be safe, be well, be kind. We will see you next week. Bye-bye.